Okay, welcome everyone to Heartland Alliance panel discussion in recognition of Transgender Day of Remembrance and annual observance of November 20, that honors the memory of the transgender people whose lives were lost in acts of anti-transgender violence. Sadly, 2020 has already seen at least 34 transgender or gender non-conforming people fatally shot or killed by other violent means in the US, the majority of which were Black and Latinx transgender women. We say at least because too often these stories go unreported or misreported. Globally, the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, ILGA, reported that 80% of these crimes against transgender people in 2019 occurred in Latin American countries. Around 2,608 transgender people were killed in this region due to their gender identity and expression. However, institutional social transphobia hinders reporting, prosecution, as well as the capacity of providing emergency protection to transgender survivors of gender-based violence. There is no doubt that we must take global efforts to protect the rights and the lives of LGBTQ people. In his first speech, President-elect Joe Biden recognized and thanked the trans community, a first recognition of its kind. Biden has acknowledged the unique struggles that transgender people face throughout his campaign, especially calling out the disproportionately high death rate for transgender women of color. He has promised to reverse President Trump's policy that threatened the rights of LGBT populations. This is a hopeful decision for our work both nationally and internationally, as it will provide a framework to embed gender and intersectional affirmative actions within our programs and policies. But there are still so many barriers that continue to disempower, disenfranchise, and otherwise harm the trans communities. A corrupt and racist criminal justice system, the segregation of housing, healthcare, and other services, and the continuation of violence towards transgender people have all impacted the community for generations. This is why we feel that it's critically important to dialogue around trans experience and to further build programmatic and policy approaches that places our particular narratives and our experiences at its core. In our continuing efforts to achieve equity and opportunity for all, individuals across Heartland Alliance have a first-hand understanding of how these inequities continues to play out. For example, Heartland Alliance International in Colombia has started a task force to embed gender transformative practices into our human resources, operations, and programs to ensure that LGBTQ people participate not only in our programs, but that they also have a protagonistic role as part of our staff. It's through these actions that we hope to build a very system that helps vulnerable populations achieve safety, opportunity, and a chance to thrive. This conversation that we are having today is important for those of us in the community to come together with allies to discuss the barriers that we face and what we must do to achieve the goal of equity and opportunity for all. I'm very proud to be here today with leaders from all across the Alliance to discuss their own experiences on these issues. And joining me today, we have Melesio Garcia, an intern with Heartland Human Care Services Asset Building Program, dedicated to increasing the wealth and economic opportunity of the people that we serve. Melanie Karimi, an Iranian refugee resettled in Chicago through Heartland Alliance Refugee and Immigrant Service participant, and Chanel Carlo, longtime participant and volunteer with Heartland Alliance Battle Bridges Food Pantry, one of the first ever food delivery programs for individuals living with HIV and AIDS. So welcome, we're very happy to have you. So I'm going to continue to introduce the panel, and then we can go ahead and listen to your experience. One of the main approaches that we need to introduce into all of our program design is working through an intersectional lens. We must consider age, gender, ethnicity, race, and sexuality, and how these identities shape the life of us all. Our society has blind spots in regard to viewing the world through this intersectional lens. And in today's discussion, we will circle around what we need to do better to serve trans individuals of color, trans immigrants, and individuals aging within the LGBT community. So why don't we start this discussion? I'm going to introduce a couple of questions, and we're eager to hear from your perspective. So speaking about history and future, we often forget that the Stonewall riots and the Pride movement started with the trans community, and particularly trans women of color led this movement. Trans individuals carry the effects of the discrimination they face in youth and adulthood with them into older age. And because trans activism and visibility has lagged behind that of lesbian, gay, and bisexuals, most members of today aging trans community have spent a majority of their lives unable to express their gender identity freely and have endured hostile social and work environments throughout their lifetime. So to speak about that, Janelle is here with us. Janelle, you recognize your own identity at a very early age. I want to know what was your experience as a trans person like back then, and how it is different today, and which barriers have you faced to healthcare and employment over the years, and how were you able to navigate them?
Okay. Well, I was diagnosed with gender identity disorder at the age of 9 by a psychiatrist, and my family was very supportive, actually. There was no programs at all. Like, actually, the T didn't even exist. It was like lesbian, gay. And to this day, still, I feel like a lot of people are on the fringes. Like, even with all the advances that have been made, trans people, especially trans women of color, are still like just like out of the loop of basic services like housing, healthcare, food, shelter, and clothing, education. Everything that I've achieved in life is because of the support system I have around me. That's why I say allies are very important. Still to this day, a lot of things that I have access to is because of the support system I have around me. And it's just not, I have a real strong problem with that, like in a country where we have so much and access to so much, there's some people are like the water's there, like, and people are still dying of thirst. My personal experience around the violence piece too, because I was stalked and shot. When you say like the people who are supposed to help you the most, like 911, when you call 911, that's the police, serve and protect, the all medical people, the Hippocratic Oath. When I got shot, everybody was there trying to help until they cut my pants off and saw, that I had a penis, and all of a sudden everybody's concern seemed to end. And people just don't understand that, how it makes you feel. And like Joe Biden, that's the first time I ever heard myself like mentioned in a conversation completely and totally, the Black piece, the woman piece, all that. But my entire story, oh, now somebody recognizes that my total existence, not just parts of my existence. And that's why I tell people, like the younger generation now, my experience is my experience. I can't speak for all trans people. I don't, you must let people know who you are, what you need, what your specific issues are.
Yes, that what you're saying is very powerful about being recognized in our existence
Right.
and our identities. Do you see how like transgender rights are advancing? What is your perspective about it in the States?
I think it's a good start. At least we're having these conversations, because even within the community, we weren't having these conversations about trans people. It was just a given that, it should be. But the conversations, yes, but still, like, it's too much of a pigeonhole. Like, this is what trans is, you know, and that doesn't fit everybody, because there's varying. Trans men have their things, and trans women have theirs. Then there's different sexual identities, and then now even trans is so much more like non-binary and way past what it was when I was first came out. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't begin to speak for every trans person saying, no, this is how we move our conversations forward, or this is what we need. That's just me and my particular group, my segment. But having conversations about it and dialogue, but everybody, whether you see yourself, in fact, if you don't see yourself represented, like if we're having conversations about trans people and you identify as trans, but what I'm saying is kind of like, but it's not completely resonating with your whole thing, that should make you know that you need to lend your voice in. You need to open up the conversation and the dialogue even further. Because like all we know is our own experiences, pretty much. And I know, like, from people that I've talked to and people I've worked with, but even that's their story, and they can expound on that even more than I could. Because aside from what happened, it's not just the facts; it's the feelings too that are important. Like a lot of times I've been felt included, but still on the outside. Somebody else telling your story is not as powerful as you telling your story.
Exactly. I think that we also in the LGBT community forget so many times that we are diverse, even inside our community, but we all share in different shades of colors the same, well, not the same, but some sorts of discriminations that are also intersectional. And that's very interesting that you remind of that, Chanel. I just want to hear from all the other members of this panel if they can also describe or they have perceived barriers to healthcare and employment that you have experienced over the year. Is there anyone else who wants to share or expand on these important points that Chanel was mentioning?
I can speak.
Of course.
Over the past couple of years, I've tried navigating the healthcare system as a low-income trans person on Medicaid, and trying to get top surgery or one of the masculine gender-affirming surgeries, and it's been very, very difficult. Even when we think that there are policies in place to protect low-income trans people, it's very easy for us to slip through the cracks. I was in a situation where my surgery was denied the day before my surgery was supposed to happen by my insurance. And I also didn't have a clinic that would go to bat for me and try to work with these insurance companies. And so, even when we think we have made it, it's very easy for us to get denied our coverage, even when we're pretty positive that it will get covered.
And how are you navigating these barriers, Mel?
Really just by doing a lot of research. I think that for a lot of trans people, the internet is kind of our best friend. And just finding clinics that accept Medicaid, and it's kind of, you kind of just have to get lucky, really. And right now I'm working with a clinic that will go to bat for me if my insurance tries to deny it. But it's also the only clinic in my state that will do that. So sometimes we just get lucky. and that's not contingent on how much work we put in.
That's a very interesting point that you have there about how to, like, sometimes we have to be very informed and have external support to be able to access our rights. Is there anyone else who want to share about this point before moving to the next question? And just to try to make a link about this and the next topic is that there are so many members of our community that present, yes. Okay, I thought I was hearing someone trying to speak. There are so many members of our community that face increased barriers, and among those are immigrants and asylum seekers. So I was going to ask that trans asylum seeker, refugees, and immigrants face multiple barriers to safety, to health, and to support in their host communities and countries. Individuals are often misgendered by bureaucracies, leading to increased dangers during the immigration processes and making it harder to find safety in the US while remaining safe in their current status and accessing many other social services, as you were describing, Mel. But I want to hear about from Melanie. Can you describe some ways that to help us best respond to the needs of refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers who identify as trans?
Okay, when I came to United States, I had to face like a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is like learning English, to speak English, because if you don't know how to speak, you cannot connect with people, you cannot have conversation with anyone. So one of the challenge was like learning English. So, and you have to, I mean, like one of the best thing, it's a school. If there is a school that can help to LGBT people, I mean, especially for transsexual people, that would be awesome, because one of the, like, you know, hardest thing it was for me, it's language. Mm-hmm. And other thing, I think you can help to the refugee people. It's like, you know, transsexual people, they need to do their surgery. I had to do my surgery by myself. So there was nobody, no one to help me. You know, I went to hospital by myself. I did everything by myself. And I stayed in hospital for 2 weeks by myself. I had to pay everything. I paid like by myself. No one there to help me. That was so hard for me. And I think, yeah, one of the best help or you can do for like refugee people as a transsexual, they coming to this country, and help for surgery, for Medicaid, because, you know, transsexual like women, they need to do like feminization surgery for their face, you know. This is the more important for them, because when you go out, the people, they recognize you're transsexual, so they're gonna act different. But like for me, whenever I like go out or anywhere, as soon as they like recognize I'm a transsexual, they completely change, you know. But like, I mean, Medicaid and like help for their surgery, it's one of the best thing I think you can help to refugee people. They came here as they're like transsexual or LGBT people.
Thank you, Melanie. Well, for example, in Colombia, we are working with refugees and asylum seekers that are coming from Venezuela, and the needs of transgender and LGBT refugees are very misunderstood, and often we just don't know which they are. I was wondering if, as an asylum seeker and also a transgender woman, how did you face or navigated barriers for example, employment or even education or ways to settle in this new environment that you were?
Education, you know what, we have to study because in like back in home, in our country, we cannot go to a school. Transsexual people, they cannot go to a school. You have to be like a man or either woman to go to a school. That's why I couldn't go to a school in my country, and I couldn't get like any education. When I came to United States, I tried to study, but I had to work. I had to work and like work hard to make money for my surgery. So I couldn't go to a school either here. And I start to work so hard. I mean, like education, like the best thing that can help like for LGBT people, especially as a transsexual people. I wish there is like a school, especially just for transsexual, that could like transsexual people as a refugee came here, that can help like, you know, English and they can get their education. That would be awesome.
Great. I think that what you're saying is it's very important to understand the main needs, and just wanted to make a final question about those positive things that you see from being in the States right now, and what joys or hope can you find to live your identity as a transgender person freely? Is there any positives?
I mean, I'm not that happy person in Chicago right now because, you know what, there is not positive things like for us, because I had like a lot of friends, they became a prostitute because of they need money. Nobody was there to help them. So thank to God, I don't become a prostitute, but a lot of my friends, they are refugee. When they came to United States, they didn't support them, so they became a prostitute. So that's why I think, you know what? I don't know what to say. Just all I want, help for refugee people as transsexual, they come to this country.
Yes, I'm really hearing you like with my heart, and it resonates a lot what you're saying, because often the LGBT community, and more severely the trans community, have like very reduced opportunities for employment and schooling, and that forces us to enter into certain practices or activities for economic opportunity. It is something that we're seeing happening globally, and that we really must be committed to provide opportunities for people to have participation in different sectors and different markets, because that also speaks about true equity and true opportunity for all, which is like one of the missions of Heartland Alliance. And thank you very much, Melanie, for sharing that and for making it visible, because we also need to keep advocating for refugees that are coming into our countries so that they can work with the same rights in the countries that they settle, but also for those who are citizens that also faced increased discriminations and barriers for labor. Just to share something of the things that happen in Colombia, although there are anti-discrimination laws, we still see a lot of LGBT people that are fired from their works. So their opportunity to work with dignity is severely reduced. So that make us think about gender norms and patriarchy. And in addition to supporting and empowering individuals from the trans community, we also face systemic and cultural barriers that continue to deter us from achieving true equity and opportunity, as Melanie was explaining. We must work to challenge cultural and gender norms that contribute to this violence and discrimination against the trans community. Mel, your work is dedicated to increase the economic opportunity of vulnerable populations. What do you believe we can do to transform the norms within our community to better serve trans populations? And if you can also reply to what Melanie was explaining about refugees and inclusion, that would be amazing as well from the US perspective.
Sure. So I think it's important we understand that like supporting trans people is not just about saying trans rights on social media. You know, it's about how we can tailor our support to improving trans people's material realities. And I think it's also important to understand how being trans can exacerbate a low-income person's financial instability, especially if they're brown or Black or have a refugee status. And so I advocate that Heartland implement specific programs dedicated to improving trans people's lives, particularly in the areas of housing, and then also financial, physical, and mental health. So like I'm working on a webinar dedicated to training people on how to address the trans population, because I also think that that's a crucial piece in understanding and working with this population. And I liked what Melanie was saying about like education and learning English, because it's not just about addressing trans people's specific like or unique issues. I mean, it's that, but it's also like how those are extra obstacles in like getting also like the bare minimum, like education, you know, like if you always have to work, like where is there time for education?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mel. I would really love to participate in your webinar. I think particularly in these topics that are so important, education and education of all of us who are serving the trans community must be a continuous effort. I really commend you for this work that you're leading. And I just want to check if Chanel has any other point regarding how to increase economic opportunity in the trans community, and how can we continue to transform these gender norms that maintain discrimination and exclusion.
Yes. When Mel and Melanie they spoke very important points. Like I say, when somebody's basic human needs are met, you have your hierarchy of needs, you know. Just like me, myself, mental health was very important to me, but I didn't have time for that because I was maintaining food, shelter, and clothing, you know, making sure I have some place to stay, some place to eat. It's people here in the country, like I know kids that get thrown out at like 12 and 13, they're on the street. So education takes a back seat, you know, when you're a child trying to find a place to stay and sleep every night. And that's what Mel was saying, giving people that space to be able to go past like the basic needs being met. You know, you can worry about education, you can worry about, you know, bettering your situation, but most people are living in survival mode, especially trans people of color. And I got where I'm going to eat today, where I'm going to sleep tonight, and basically my safety in this world. When that's in the forefront of your mind all the time, you don't have time for what's important. Like health, mental health was important to me. Like education is important to her. You know, those are luxuries when you're living in survival mode. I got to stay alive. I got to find a place to stay, and I got to find food for today. So you're basically living like it's your basic animalistic needs being met. So it makes it impossible for people to like move forward in life, even participate really in life, because you're not even living, you're existing, you know, just trying to stay alive to the next day. So definitely that housing and food, like financial aid, that gives people space to grow.
That gives, yeah, continue.
And I really feel male because like Melanie, because and male too actually, because people like, yeah, it's against the law to discriminate, but life is a lot more smoother when you look like what your ID, like some people's IDs don't even match, but when you look, when you go for employment, when you go for this and other, you know, when your facial, if you need facial film or if you need a top surgery as a trans male, it just makes life a lot easier and smoother, although it shouldn't matter, but it does. You know, those surgeries are the affirming surgeries are very important with how people perceive you, and because you don't know what's in somebody's head, because we don't discriminate here, but you go in for a job or you go to school, like I know girls, they tried to go to school, but it was just too much pressure from what they had to deal with from other students and even instructors that they just, you know, drop out.
Definitely. And I think all these responses that you've given from your experiences and your perspectives really allow us to see how having like an intersectional analysis is very important. Because the needs of the different people within the trans community are very different, and our own individuals needs are very different as well. So that's important to consider when we are responding through a program or a project that we have inside Heartland Alliance. I just wanted to make this very last question, but please feel free to expand as long as you want. What do you hope to see changed or achieved in a Biden-Harris administration? And if you want to start, Chanel, that you were mentioning that in the beginning, please go ahead.
Well, I think he's come up under an administration too, where like they have real conversations. I know people that worked with personally on his campaign and like have real conversations with him and his people. I would like to see people move forward more. Like actually in Chicago here, we actually have trans health is like a real thing now, you know. And we have a surgeon that came in. He's working with a lot of people in Northwestern for their permanent surgeries. Like it's being recognized as like, this is not like cosmetic surgery. This is like something necessary, right down to like, because there's still places where people can't even get access to their hormones, which is very important to a lot of people, you know. So just continuing with the conversations, not just the bare minimum or just like pacification, like, okay, a little something just to keep you all quiet, you know. People who are really concerned and really care about like all aspects of the community, not just like everybody's individual personal needs, especially medical, socioeconomic, and mental, as far as I'm concerned, because what a piece that like a lot of us, like I say, it's a luxury for me to be able to take my mental health, as important as it is now. That's one of the most important things to me. It's very stressful. It's very like, and that's a piece people don't even get to think about because it's like, I just gotta live. That will just make your life even that much more better. Like my life, I've had all the things that like my food, shelter, clothing, actually live really nice and well, but still not being able to just take time to take care of myself mentally. I realize now, like, wow, you know, how important that is to just be like, you know, do what's best for me today, as opposed to what do I have to do today to survive?
True. Well, thank you very much, Nell. I think that's very important. Like that the changes and improvements in LGBT rights are real and not just to keep a part of the population happy. That's very powerful. And do we have any other perspective, Melanie, about what you're hoping to see in this new administration?
I think that healthcare is a big one. I was a big supporter of Medicare for all. So of course I'm disappointed that Biden doesn't advocate for Medicare for all. However, he is advocating that we have a public option and that anyone can opt into. And I guess I'm just really hoping that that's going to be robust and cover gender affirming surgeries.
Thank you, Mel. And Melanie, do you have any insight or thought about refugee and immigrants' rights and also transgender rights? What are you hopeful for in this new administration?
Like my friends said, like I really hope they help for about like insurance, healthcare, about their surgery, especially for transsexual people, for M2F or F2M to do like gender change. And if that would be like, you know, help with insurance, healthcare, that would be awesome. Otherwise, we have to make money and pay it by ourselves. For example, for me, I paid like almost 30-something thousand to do my surgery. That's crazy. I've worked almost 4 years to save that money to do my surgery. So I hope everything is changed and they make like some insurance to cover that like transsexual people surgeries.
Amazing. That's very important and vital for our mental health in general. And I just want to one last question that it wasn't in the script that we prepared, but now that I'm hearing about your perspectives in the US and seeing that the policies in the US really shape and impact other countries, in Colombia and in other programs in the world where we are implementing projects like development and emergency projects, we often see that transgender communities have almost no access to mental health or to other support services. And I want to know from you, what would you consider important for our international programs? And if our participants in, I don't know, Nigeria, Colombia, Lebanon are watching us, do you have any message for people who are experiencing the same as you are, if they're trying to move to some other country to flee war, if they're trying to seek medical services without being able to fund it? Would you like to share your thoughts and messages to them who are also might be tuning in our Facebook to watch us?
Well, for me personally, I would like to say that just like what Mel's going through, been through it myself. But it's your chances are better here than anywhere else. You know, you just have to find the right people, and pretty much the same things like word of mouth, like, oh, go over to this doctor or go over to this psychiatrist, this this plastic surgeon. You got to navigate your way and find it, but at least there's a way here.
Yeah, I think this is where online support groups can come really in handy. You know, if you're thinking about making the move to the United States, there are a lot of support groups in different cities, specifically for like LGBT support groups, like on Facebook or Reddit. or Instagram, anything like that, those can be very, very helpful.
Thank you, Mel and Chanel. And again, just want to say that we're very brave. You're very brave, and particularly transgender women of color and Latinx who have had to endure this very hard situation and still be shining and still be leading in your own communities. That is remarkable. So I feel very honored to have spent with you this time and have listened to your experiences. I just want to thank you for sharing your perspectives to this critical time, and we really look forward to hear more from you in the future. And I really hope that you continue to live amazing lives and continue to be living true to yourselves. I admire you deeply for what I've heard from you today. This week is a time for reflection. It's a time to share our stories, a time for hope, and ultimately a time for action. And I want to be very very emphatic about this. That action requires a strong collaboration and participation from the community, also from allies. So I want to thank you for sharing your stories, and I want to thank everyone who is listening to this panel. This work can only be done together with your help. And if you haven't already, please follow us on social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to be more updated on our work. And if you wish to learn more about these people that we serve, and check out heartlandalliance.com to hear more about our great participants that we had today in this panel. Thank you very much. And this was only possible because you were kind and you wanted to share this out with us and share our stories. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Chanel. And thank you, Melanie.